Recording in progress.
with our information sharing meeting. First up, we'll do introductions. I'm Pat Malone, Commissioner and Chair.
Good morning, Zan Ojiro, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
In the room.
Go ahead, Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Kapira, Executive Director of Marys River Watershed Council.
My name is Jerry Sorty, Benton County Economic Development.
I'm Amanda Makepeace, I'm Administrative Specialist.
Erica Milo, Board Recorder.
Corey Rogan, Benton County Public Information.
Okay, do we have anybody joining us remotely?
Vance Cronic, County Council.
Good morning, Darren Nichols, Benton County Community Development Director.
You need to raise your camera up a little bit, Darren.
There, how's that?
I don't know.
Well, now we can't see you.
It's probably.
There we go.
Yeah,
Good morning.
now you're just being scary. Good morning. All right, any announcements this morning?
No.
Hearing none, we'll go to item number 2, review and approve our agenda. Are there any additions or corrections? Agenda is approved. Item number 3, the work session. We'll start off with annual report from the Marys River Watershed Council. Come up to the desk, Holly.
Here. Thank you. And thank you all for having me today. It's good to see you in person. I think the last couple of annual reports we've had have been over Zoom. So nice to be here.
Your clicker, if you can direct it at the computer on the screen.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and as I mentioned, I'm Holly Papira, Executive Director at the Marys River Watershed Council. I've been working with the Watershed Council here for going on 5 years. And then also as an update, we have added a couple of new faces to the Marys River Watershed Council and are recruiting for 2 new positions and 1 position after Jasmine, our education project manager, moved recently to North Carolina, and then 1 new position to help us with our restoration programming. And our board of directors. Yeah, and for those of you in the room who may not be familiar with the Watershed Council, every year we come and give an annual report as part of our original designation from the Benton County Commission as a watershed council operating in the Marys River watershed, which the lion's share of the Marys River watershed is in Benton County. And we've been around here for over 20 years. And yeah, we service individuals across Benton County through both our education and restoration programming. Our watershed extends into the Coast Range, and it's no major dams. It provides drinking water for the city of Corvallis, city of Philomath, and as well has mixed land use. Our expenditures for the year for our annual income and expenses over the past year, we were fortunate enough to receive a large bequest from a generous individual in the city of Corvallis, which has helped us build sustainability within our organization. And then in addition to that, we've been able to expand a couple of our restoration programs and diversify funds from not only state, but also into federal funds. And we're hoping to continue to do so, especially within the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the infrastructure funds that are out at the federal level. To give a couple updates of our education programming, we've mostly resumed our in-person education programming. As a reminder, over the past couple of years, with social distancing, we've been working predominantly over remote learning, and then we resumed field trips this past school year in the spring. And one story from one of our field trips with our third graders last spring they were so excited to be able to go into the field. Their teachers told us that for weeks beforehand that they were asking, are you sure it's going to happen? Are you sure we're going to go? Which was so sweet. And also for many of them with COVID-19, it was the first field trip they had been on maybe since kindergarten or first grade. So they were so excited to get out in the field. And in addition to continuing our elementary school programming, we've also expanded into high school, both field trips for high school classes in Philomath High School, as well as College Hill. And we've expanded our peer mentor program into a youth watershed council where we provide career development as well as leadership skills and other in-depth engagement with 12 to 20 high school students in Benton County. And we're also still working we're hoping to investigate the possibility of having an extension to the outdoor school program that the Corvallis Dual Immersion Schools participate in. And that's something that we're hoping to get up off the ground in the coming years. A couple of updates from our connections and partnerships across Benton County and as well as across the region. We are one of the core members of the Confluence Group, which is working with Alan Ayers, a developer in Corvallis, to construct the building located next to Robnet's Hardware, and then as well as to have other partnerships within the collaborative. And the building construction is still underway. For those of you who haven't been in it, it's an absolute work of art. Alan, he's self-milling a lot of the wood, both for the floors, for everything. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. So if you're down near Robnet's in the Old World Deli, I'd recommend to poke your eyes in the window and or if the door's open to poke your head in and check it out.
Holly, is there a movie date?
So right now we are working to raise funds for the internal outfitting of the building. And so within that, so to set up the things like the office spaces, how we want them. And so the estimated internal outfitting costs are about $1 million. And so we're searching around for funds and engaging with partners across the region as well as at state and federal levels to try to line up those funds. And so, yeah, and also within that, Alan is working on constructing the building and he's self-milling a lot of the wood too to help with cost savings for the building itself. If we were to say get a large grant from the federal level, he could speed up construction. But right now we're moving at a pace that matches each other's funding portfolios and time. So, but right now the building is really, it still some time out, but it is definitely like the floors are a large part of the floors for all 4 stories are going in, and it's definitely coming along really well. And so right now the biggest rubber hitting the road that need is on the Confluence nonprofit member side. And with us being 4 small nonprofits, we're searching around for funds. And so if, as you all are putting together your annual budget and or if you come across funds too at the state or federal level that you think would be a good fit for the project, we would love to talk with you all. So, and it's, the funds we're working to line up are for, as I mentioned, laying out the office spaces, like buying the supply, the tables, the conference infrastructure, the setting up the buildings that we need for them to become offices, and is part of the original agreement with Alan that we had discussed. So,
I was on the Benton Soil and Water Board when this was a concept.
yeah.
And so who are the other lead partners?
So right now, the 4 core partners are Greenbelt Land Trust, Marys River Watershed Council, Cascade Pacific RC&D, and Corvallis Environmental Center. Benton Soil and Water Conservation District is, they are still hoping to be part of the building in some capacity, but due to recommendations from their legal counsel as being a core member and wrapped within the fundraising that we're doing and other efforts, they were suggested to no longer be a core member, but still continue to be engaged. And then similarly, the Institute for Applied Ecology stepped back, but they were needing an office space sooner. And so they ended up buying a building. So yeah, they won't be in the building anymore, but they're still engaged through other respects of the Confluence Group.
Great, it's a great concept, and looking forward to when people are in the building.
Yeah, we are too. We've seen, I know from the past decade of renting from the same building as Greenbelt Land Trust, just how much of a nexus that close proximity can be, the ideas formulated, and then as well as the thought of being within this building and having that, but times 4, 5, 6 plus of with a building of this size, of the being able to walk down the hall and brainstorm or run into a colleague in the office. And then as well as the prospect of the potential cost savings within the building, and then just being in a building that's like a community center. It's something that I think is going to be remarkable, and it's a huge asset for Benton County. And so we're definitely hoping to make our move into there possible as soon as possible. And so the last thing that we need to line up is the funding for that.
I would point out that we will have another round. I like this one. We will have another round of our ARPA grant funding. And this time around, it is a bit contingent upon what happens with our bond measure, because we may need to dip into those ARPA funds in order to address some of our needs for the full justice system improvement program. But check our webpage. The lead on this is our finance department, Rick Krager and Sharissa. I've forgotten her last name. Steve, thank you. But there should be a notice of the opportunity coming up, and either somewhere in March, between March and June.
Okay.
I think we delayed it until June, so we had more certainty about funding. But supporting nonprofits that were affected by COVID is certainly one of the focuses of the ARPA dollars at the federal level. So it's worth a try.
Yeah, we'll definitely check it out. Thank you so much. Another partnership that I did want to talk about today too is our collaboration with the watershed councils in the Mid-Willamette. So as we have named ourselves the Mid-Valley River Connections, and as part of this collaboration with the Lackamutte, Calapooya, North Santiam, South Santiam, and Marys River Watershed Councils, I was a spin-off of our collaboration as part of the Meyer Memorial Trust Model Watershed Program. And we've continued that close collaboration, that peer learning, as well as an equity, diversity, inclusion, and justice process. And this group as well in the past year has begun to really vamp up our collaborative grant writing and collaborative restoration processes, especially in light of the federal funding becoming available as part of the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure funds. And we last year submitted a grant for $7 million to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, to help with fish passage across a portfolio of fish passage replacements across the Mid-Willamette in 19 different projects. And while we weren't funded this past round, we ranked really high and just fell below the funding line, and we're hoping to resubmit. NOAA is set to continue to have the same level of funding, what in a grant program that used to be about $2 million a year total, they have $98 million a year for the next 5 years. And so we're hoping to really bring about watershed-wide system changes across the Mid-Willamette. And it's a really exciting time. And in addition to the fish passage work that we're hoping to get funded, we're also putting together a portfolio of habitat enhancement work as well. And to similarly, to be able to look at restoration on a holistic scale and to be able to make significant strides within salmon and salmonid recovery efforts in the Mid-Willamette. And so fingers crossed there. And another project that with similar partners, and then in addition to the watershed councils in the Mid-Willamette, also working with the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians Natural Resources Department and Bonneville Environmental Foundation. We have been collaborating with a Mid-Willamette Beaver partnership where we're having a stakeholder engagement process where we surveyed about 4,000 individuals in the Mid-Willamette, and then as well as having interviews with and focus groups with public works departments, folks who own farms, folks who work as land managers with timber companies, to understand the limiting factors to beavers remaining on the landscape, because beavers do a lot of the same habitat restoration work that we do as watershed councils, and they do it for free, which is great. And so we want to really help to understand and help to find coexistent measures to allow beavers to remain on the landscape. And then we're pairing this process with a technical assistance that we are evaluating areas of opportunity for beaver dam building, using remote sensing and working with researchers out of Utah State. And so we are about 2 years into this process. We have the preliminary data from the remote sensing and data from our surveys and most of our focus groups. And yeah, beginning to take next steps to the possibility of laying out projects and encouraging beaver. And another collaboration that we've been involved with, and thanks in part to you all, has been taking the first steps towards a green stormwater infrastructure program in Benton County. And we've met with a technical advisory team. We've been participating in the Benton County Public Works Stormwater Implementation Group. And we've as well been connecting with stakeholders across the county, including a meeting this afternoon with Darren. So looking forward to meeting with you, Darren. And and we're really looking forward to beginning to work in our urban watersheds in Benton County and to be able to help within stormwater, to install green stormwater catches and other ways to help reduce pollutants from being washed into the watersheds. And a few updates of our restoration programming. We've been continuing to work with Benton County Public Works for plant establishment on a couple of culvert replacement sites. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with Benton County Public Works in various respects across the years to come. We're also continuing our treatment of knotweed across the watershed. We've expanded our work from 4 specific watersheds where we had found knotweed to surveying across the Marys and treating across the Marys. And for those of you who aren't familiar, knotweed's an incredibly aggressive invasive species that it can reproduce from even the slightest fragment of a leaf. We've seen like a leaf cutting that big taking root. And so it's something that has to be treated. It can't be treated by cutting it down because it will actually get 10, 15, 100 times worse of getting washed downstream. And so the way that we treat it is through water soluble herbicides. And we've seen it really phenomenal gains in the watersheds we've been treating it. And the invasive species, it becomes a monoculture and suffocates out other plants in the riparian areas. And this past year, we also, as part of one habitat enhancement project, we went back into an additional phase of work in Woods Creek, one of our key watersheds in the Marys River, to both retreat logs that we had put in about a decade ago, so we can retain the gains that we have been seeing over the past years, as well as installing new large wood debris. And what the large woody debris does is helps to accumulate gravels and helps the water and helps to build complexity in a watershed system that may have been channelized through industrial purposes, which helps to reduce impacts from flooding, helps to cool down water, and is what our streams naturally looked like. And so we're helping to mimic that, as well as to really build habitat across our watersheds, especially for salmon and trout. And we're set to go into work in the Muddy Creek subwatershed, the project. So over the past couple of years, we've been doing eDNA sampling, working with the Bureau of Land Management. And then as well, we've been working with Benton Soil and Water Conservation District's strategic implementation area in the Upper Muddy watershed to do E. coli sampling, as well as a slew of other sampling to evaluate water quality in the area. And as part of our eDNA sampling efforts, we outlined an area of opportunity for restoration in the Upper Muddy, which is in the down near Monroe in Benton County. And we're set to add complexity into the system through large woody debris, bank pullbacks, as well as to replace undersized culverts to help with fish passage. And it's set to be a pretty large project, over a mile of stream. And we're working with funding from the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Forest Service, and then potentially the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board to carry out this restoration project. Yeah, and that's all I had for my update to you all this morning. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, when you were talking about invasive knotweed, it reminds me of a story I like about where Himalaya blackberries came from.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was burpee seed, but one of the seed companies sold it 100 years ago. And I'd love to see the verbiage that went with it: hardy, prolific. So it and that was on purpose.
Yeah.
Japanese knotweed too.
Yeah, a lot of invasive species, especially plant species. It's one of those that as they're brought in, especially before it's known, that it's just would be curious to see the economic impacts too of some of these invasive species that have been brought in, or even thinking about the emerald ash borer, which as you all probably know, has been found in Oregon now. And before working with the Marys River Watershed Council, I worked with a watershed nonprofit in West Virginia, and right in the heart of the emerald ash borer being found in West Virginia. And within 3 years, seeing the devastation into riparian areas that this bug, which the emerald ash borer is a bug that arrived through shipping containers. It wasn't actually brought in and sold like Himalayan blackberry, but even so, just the amount of damage both to our environments, but as well as just the economic impacts. Yeah, it's something that is very concerning. And I know that we're keeping tabs in the Marys for the emerald ash borer too, as it comes in, and working to put in a proposal potentially to the to a couple of grant funders to help with disturbance interplanting for when the emerald ash borer spreads. And with the amount of ash trees that constitute our riparian areas, especially when looking at salmonid recovery efforts, it's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, of knowing that, especially knowing from talking with practitioners who had worked up in Forest Grove where they had found the borer, that it had looked like it was the infestation was around for 3 to 4 years, and the amount it could spread from there, or also the amount of unseen presence, since it takes a couple of years for it to become noticeable. And seeing how fast that ash died in my past position of even with some mitigation efforts and preventing transporting firewood and so on. I think it's something that's definitely going to be coming down the line. And I would encourage you all to, if you haven't already, to look into it more, because it's something that Benton County is going to see too. And not only within shading streams, but also the cost of taking out trees that could fall on people's cars, houses, hiking trails as people walk. It's something that, impacts that are going to be seen pretty widely and is going to be pretty costly.
Holly, on the emerald ash borer, is it the Oregon Department of Agriculture that has the lead?
Yeah.
Okay, and an awful lot of that, the ash is in low elevation wetland.
Yeah, fair bit of it. And it's definitely a tree that is prevalent across, especially the Willamette, but even elsewhere throughout the state. And it's makes up a lot of our riparian cover. And with salmon recovery efforts, salmon need cold water to survive. And so if all of the ash in our riparian corridors die off, which could potentially happen, it could severely impact those recovery efforts.
Well, I'm glad you're thinking about work in that arena. Sounds like a good thing for the partnership, the Mid-Willamette group.
Okay, well, I really appreciate your update, and nice to learn about all the activities that you're involved with or would like to be involved with.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to see you all.
And one last question. Are you still actively involved in the partnership with the schools in Mexico?
We're taking a step back from our involvement within that program, just with limited funding available within the program. And then with Jasmine, our education project manager, moving in limited staff capacity this spring.
But moving more into the bilingual and dual immersion work here locally. So we're working locally, and we're hoping to expand our presence, especially within working with 5th grade programs, as well as other classes throughout the county. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
Next up, update from the Corvallis Benton County Economic Development Office, Jerry Sorty.
Morning, Chair Malone, members of the board. It's great to see you in person. Got just a brief update on what we've are working on presently in the Corvallis Benton County Economic Development Office. And of course, would love to engage you in questions after. As you know, we had 4 employees in our office several months ago, and now we're working with just 2 employees. And so we've really been focusing our efforts on projects with typically funding streams that have hard deadlines attached to those. So we've tried to be really strategic in the projects that we're working on. We continue to be a point of contact for individuals looking to start a business. We then make referrals to Small Business Development Center, the Regional Accelerator and Innovation Network, and some of our other partners. But as of late, we've been very project focused. As you know, the county awarded our office two grants under the ARPA program. And one of those is the Food Hub project, and the other, which is 550,000. We can take a quick pause. We good? Okay.
Sorry, I think they're just fixing the
Okay.
slideshow. Yeah.
It's all good. So we're looking at our 2 ARPA projects. We are awarded $550,000 to vet and look at establishing a food hub in South Corvallis. That's a project that we're working on moving forward. Individual in our office, Catherine Duvall, has assembled a work group. One of our next steps with that project will be to engage a consultant to try to identify gaps and help to provide a strategy for establishing the food hub. So we're working forward on that project. We've also started to piece together a business funding program with the $275,000 ARPA program. I will be back to talk with you a little bit more about that program at your next February business meeting. As a part of the contract with the county, it had a component where our office would come back with a more detailed program, and we've started to put together those details. Those ARPA funds are geared towards providing essentially business recovery funds that are needed by businesses coming out of the pandemic. So we'll want to move quickly on that, since the intention there is, again, to support businesses who had financial duress during the pandemic. We also are working on a couple of other specific projects. One is outdoor dining in Corvallis. Outdoor dining was something that started, again, as a pandemic response program, but we found that it's been a way to create community and business opportunity within the city of Corvallis specifically. We're of course available to other cities in Benton County who may want to start such a program. We've learned, we've considered this a pilot program, and have learned some best practices to how to use public spaces in a little bit different ways to provide business opportunities and also community opportunities. So those are the main projects that we're working on. I know that our city manager, Mark Shepard, is currently planning next steps for our office, because again, we've got two positions that are not currently filled in our office. And I know that Mark is looking at next steps. So I'll make sure to keep the board up to date as we think about how the office might look moving forward. So that is admittedly a brief update for sure, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about what we might be working on.
How is the work with the partner organizations going with RAIN, for instance?
I think it's going well. We've maintained communication with our partner organizations. I think we're making referrals on a almost daily basis, but several a week. So I feel like that is a great relationship, very communicative. And we're seeing some businesses, I think, start to get some traction from having those connections. And one of the, probably the most common question that we get in terms of phone calls to our office is starting a business here in Benton County. How do I do this or that? And I think we are all benefited by having these partners who can help startups take those next steps. So I feel like the partnerships are going well.
And
Yeah.
how about, I know that the other projects that Kate was working on directly was working with the rural cities, with the Dare Village and
Mhm.
Willamette, in terms of both Main Street projects and
Yeah.
Urban Renewal District up in the Dare. Are all of those basically on hold?
I would say that those are on hold. We're still available, of course, to the other cities in the county, but with limited capacity, I think we are limited presently in our ability to assist in a substantive way with some of those projects.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to
Mhm.
seeing you all be more fully staffed. I know you are also dealing with the climate action work at the
Mhm.
city, and I'm concerned as a partner that
Yeah.
you have the bandwidth you need.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. With respect to climate work, our office is keeping an eye on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a federal opportunity, I think, for our county to provide energy efficiency improvements. So we're keeping an eye on those funds. And once we see a route where we can start to advertise, once rules are created and funds are released and available to individuals and businesses in the county, our office, I think, will want to make that information known. We will probably want to do that at a community level through a number of different channels. But if it's, again, a business, say, taking some sort of action to reduce their energy costs, I think that there's benefits again for hopefully for businesses and individuals.
Jerry, you mentioned the staffing and are you planning to try to replace both positions so you're back up to 4 or
Yeah, I think that remains to be seen. I think that's a question for the city manager, and I know that he is gathering information to try to make a timely decision and get that process moving forward. Mhm.
so you're not currently in a search mode?
That's right. We're not currently recruiting.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Well, I hope the recruitment process starts soon, and I hope
Mhm.
that we will be consulted about the partnership. I know that the city manager and county administrators speak regularly, but this partnership is one that
Mhm.
I think very highly of. It's a model for a lot of the other collaborative work we do with the city, and I would really be sad to see it eroded.
I'll certainly pass that along. Thank you. Thank you again for your time, and I'll be back to see you here in February on the specifics of the business funding program. Sound good?
Great,
Thank you.
looking forward to that. Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Maybe Donna Holt is online.
I don't see a Donna Holt.
how about Joel Plan for the water?
I don't see them either. Last 2 times, I think. Maybe we should take a break a little early,
Or we could go into new business.
Let's take a break.
Okay.
Stop right that way.
All right, we will take a 5-minute break and see about getting our next 2 presenters. Next up. Next up is the annual report from the Lynn Benton Housing Authority, Donna Holt.
Thank you. And is it on? Can you hear me okay? Thank you for having me here today. I think it's great to be able to keep everyone updated on what all of us are doing. There's so many different directions we're all going in. And hopefully many of us are moving in the same direction together. So we have those collaborations. My name is Donna Holt. I'm the executive director at Lynn Benton Housing Authority. We're a public agency, and I have been there 28, almost 29 years. You can believe that. I was an Oregon State University graduate and did my internship with Lynn Benton Housing Authority. So been from the front desk to where I'm at as the director now and seen many changes in the communities and the programs. So today I would like to just kind of go over some basics and then some. I did bring some updated information from our programs. So first, yes, we are a public agency. Many people refer to us as HUD, and we just give up. We don't correct all the time, but we do administer a significant amount of HUD dollars and programs. So that's understandable. We're a developer of affordable housing as well. So familiar with Camas Commons, we are partners in that. We are a partner in the Julian and many other developments in Lynn and Benton County. And we continue to attempt to increase the supply of affordable housing. Like I said, we have many contracts with HUD. HUD is a challenging entity, but I do want to state that we are fortunate to have a terrific field office in Portland with HUD. Great representation at the DC level for our housing authority and the 22 other housing authorities in the state of Oregon. We're very in touch with the state, the governor's office, meeting quite often, and looking forward to some new changes with the new administration. So we'll move on to the next screen. Look at that, I did that. We've been in operation since 1971. We were separate Lynn County and separate Benton County housing authorities, and they merged in the mid-70s. We provide various forms of affordable housing programs. Many of them are new to us. The voucher assistance program is not new to us. We've been running that program since our existence. It's come under different names, certificate program and such. To over 2,500 households receive assistance under that program in Lynn County and Benton County together. The Veterans VASH housing for homeless veterans, there's 89 of those individuals and households receiving assistance. Mod Rehab is the assistance that pays the Julian rents, and those are a HUD assistance. Emergency housing vouchers are new. Those are in collaboration with Community Services Consortium, a referral of direct homeless individuals and families receiving immediate assistance with a navigator that we're thrilled to have this year. That funding came with navigator funding from HUD. And before this has been unheard of. It's been dreamed of, but it's been unheard of. So it's made that program highly successful. And I'll go through some data here in a bit, but it's actually has a higher percentage success rate in Benton County than Lynn County, quite contrary to the regular voucher program. So, we're kind of looking at why is that different? So because it's our effort to get more success in the Benton County area. The mainstream voucher program is for non-elderly disabled individuals. We've been running that program for years, but it was in a smaller number, and we've recently applied for and received more vouchers in that area. And then affordable housing, we have 250, getting close to 300 units now of affordable housing that we own and manage. So we have a management group within our agency. We like to control things when it comes to funding and requirements and all of that. So we keep control of our properties that way. And the mission for the housing authorities and improving the quality of life in Lynn and Benton counties through affordable housing. Quite simple, but says a lot. And it's a big hope and a big goal. I think of many agencies in the area. We help families succeed, through self-sufficiency and just basic survival needs, essential community resources, kind of obvious stuff, but we also support the local economy with those federal dollars, which are around 24 million now. Just a few short years ago, we're 17 million. So we're applying for everything that comes out. Increasing those dollars in the community is important. We work in collaboration, obviously, with many community partners to address the needs of in homelessness and affordable housing. And I have to say, with all the challenges, COVID included, that's the most beautiful thing that comes out of that. Negative thing is the collaborations and community partnerships. It just tends to grow, and it's better now, far better than when I began working at the Housing Authority, and increases in collaborations every year. So federally subsidized rental assistance program, the Section 8 program known as the Housing Choice Voucher Program, the HUD program, just the Section 8 program, many different names that it's known by, is the main program the Housing Authority runs in both counties. Most rent assistance is tenant-based. Our hope, and within our own program policy, we've created room to have project-based vouchers. We have a development in Lebanon, Oregon, where we tested project-based vouchers. Unlike half the housing authorities in Oregon, we had never done that before. So I included that in our policies. And it's a challenging way to administer vouchers, but it's doable. The thought is that by project-basing vouchers, you promote affordable housing, that there are better point system with tax credit funds, for example. If you have project-based vouchers, you have a guaranteed rent subsidy tied to the units, as opposed to moving around. There's some stability in that. So it's a benefit to our agency, the program, and the property and the community to do that when we can. We've been maximizing our dollars, however, in the last many years. We spend what we have and then some. So that flexibility for project-based voucher isn't so much there at the time, but it's always going to be an opportunity that we look forward to doing. We've project-based veteran vouchers. That works quite well. The VA appreciates that local kind of condensed location of veterans, so they can serve them better and provide services. Participants in the voucher program choose their own homes. They're waiting on the waiting list for quite some time, 1 to 3 years. I was at a time, it was 4 years wait. And they are handed the paperwork to search, and that people refer to that as the voucher. And they find their own home. They negotiate with their own landlord. They'll call us if they need help with that. The participants have to be a low income level to qualify. And like many of you know, the income limits change from year to year. Definitely vouchers are an essential tool to help provide stability in the community for low income families and individuals, persons with disabilities, seniors, etc. It provides a stepping stone towards self-sufficiency. We have a self-sufficiency program built within our Section 8 program. Coordinators and such help families move off of all public assistance. We do 100 caseload a year of those families, and they graduate from the program with escrow accounts and do home purchases. They graduate with degrees during the 3 to 5 years that they're involved in this program. They certainly bring inspiration and light to all of our world when we see it happen. You know, we're moving along through the year, and then we start seeing success in this group, and it gives us all hope. And they pass that hope on to their generations that live in their home. There's approximately 3,000 families on the waiting list. That's been 4,000 at some times. It gets down to 2,000. We tend to flood the market with voucher holders, and we look at the success rate, and we're doing a lot of predicting and a lot of guessing, and we don't have a crystal ball, but we certainly could use one if it worked. But that's how the HUD programs work. It's a big guessing game. The applicants, like I said, would wait currently around 2.5 years for assistance. And And there's a preference. Anyone and everyone can apply for these vouchers. But once they reach the top, we verify incomes and a lot of other details. And we provide a preference to a person with terminal illness. I'm sorry, let me move that along for you. Persons with terminal illness get expedited for obvious reasons. And there's also a preference for applicants who are seniors, 62 or older, persons with disability, as well as families with minor children under the age of 18, or any of those other combinations. So here's kind of an example how we work together with landlords. We are not in an adversarial relationship with landlords. We try not to ever be, because they are our partners. They provide the housing. We do, however, have to enforce things with landlords as well as participants. So the voucher is the agreement between the housing authority and the participant. A lot of rules in there that a participant family needs to follow. An example is they cannot damage a unit when they move out, or they can lose their voucher. So then there's a relationship and a formal document between the housing authority and the landlord, and that's the lease. Or excuse me, that's the HAP contract. That's the document the landlord signs that they agree to accept payment from the housing authority, and they will keep the unit in good condition, etc. Between the tenant and the landlord is a typical lease that you'd have on the open market. We get a copy of it. We help the landlord not so much enforce it, but we have some leverage. We warn tenants that they need to comply with their lease and work with their land, and vice versa. We warn landlords that you need to comply with your lease and keep units in good condition. We do inspections at least annually and communicate with both those partners. We like to refer to all of them as partners because it is a successful program if there are those partners in place. I mentioned the program's grown to $24 million a year. The Section 8 program has. And it's distributed in Lynn and Benton County, and I'll give you a breakdown of how that's distributed here in a minute. There are well over 700 landlords that participate with the Section 8 program with Lynn and Benton Housing Authority. The Housing Authority pays the landlord a percentage of the rent directly based on the family's income. The tenant rent portion is based on their household income. 30 to 40% generally of the household's gross monthly income is paid toward rent and utilities. I'll add a caveat there. However, landlords can do rent increases with the voucher program, and eventually the families are paying an extremely high percentage of the rent. The voucher program is not designed to stop that. It kind of flows into the regular market process. So we have families on our program paying more than 50% of their income toward rent and utilities, which is a grossly high number, and Corvallis and Benton County is very well aware of that. The Housing Choice Voucher Program does not cover move-in security deposits, fees, things like that. A family's expected to, have those. They're outrageous. We're fortunate to work in collaboration with other agencies such as CSC to help families find those funds. As many of you know, if you've ever rented or know someone who rents, move-in costs are just quite high and unreasonable for a low-income family. There's less than 50% success rate in both counties. That means that less than half the people we hand voucher to will actually end up using it. So those families go through a lot as well. Our housing authority staff go through a lot to get them to that point. At this last glance, it was closer to 40% success rate. I'm going to bring some good news in here. Just ran some numbers this morning, and it looks like we're moving closer to getting close to the 60% in our current month. So that has a lot to do with a few things that I'll bring up here in a moment. The families often already have a lot of barriers. They're competing with a lot of renters that have vouchers, renters that don't. But the families may also have credit history problems, criminal history problems, eviction issues. We try to be creative in helping the families overcome some of these problems, and we negotiate and communicate with the landlords on their behalf when we can. Families are unable to find a place in their timeline, and a lot of times, and they have to reapply. Imagine that. You wait 3 years, you get your voucher. You go out there and you look and look and look, and you can't find anything. you expire and you have to go back and wait another 3 years. We've put in place some exceptions. A person with disabilities certainly can come and say, I'm not able to do things and that allow me to search. I need more time. Someone's hospitalized, etc. We do want to make exceptions, and we do our best to do that for folks. We do value our partnerships and collaborations. And I have questions, but if you don't mind at first, before the questions, I'm going to go over some of that information. So I mentioned, the success rate getting better. That's a good thing. And the reason we attribute that to a recent change in our financial structure. So we normally, as an agency, have a safety net of a reserve to cover. Believe it or not, sometimes HUD doesn't come through and send the check through in time. And so we have to dig somewhere else and pay for landlords' rents to keep them happy. We've decided, and HUD has pushed us actually, to spend down our reserves. Not a comfortable thing, especially for our accounting department. Who likes to spend their savings when you don't know what's ahead of you in the future? But the reasoning behind it is the increasing rents in the area. We are constantly chasing the increasing rents. In order to find more success and higher success rates, we need to increase the amount that the voucher pays. To do that, we have to dip into that reserve because we have one pot of money that HUD gives us. We can't overspend it, but we are right now. And we're covering that with our reserve. If we overspend it too much, we know that we'll end up dipping into our administrative money that pays our light bills and our staffing to cover some of those funds. I believe that we're pretty safe in the next couple years, that most housing authorities that have already done that have asked HUD for extra funds, and that has been covered. So we're gambling, but we're gambling on the community, and we're doing what we can to keep chasing that higher rent rate. It's proving to be successful in that success rate of families using their voucher. The regular housing choice voucher program, I talked about the difference in Lynn County and Benton County, and this is something we track on a regular basis. Benton County has been historically around 25% utilization of our vouchers. That means 25% of that $24 million is all that's coming into Benton County. We need to get that higher. We're moving in the right direction. We've got Benton County up to 32%. Some of the reasons you can think of are obvious. This is a university area. Housing stock is limited, and housing costs are higher. And there's a number of reasons. We have a higher payment standard, which means we pay more on a family that lives in Benton County than we do on a family in Lynn County, hoping that makes a difference. And that's based on fair market rents that are given out every year. And we increase our rents based on that and looking at the needs in the area. Excuse me. The Lynn County area tends to be a default area for families. If they have no success in using their voucher in Benton County, they will certainly go to Lynn County and then commute, which causes a lot of traffic on Highway 34, Highway 20. So it contributes to a lot of challenges for the families as well. The new mainstream vouchers, the new allocations, those are the non-elderly disabled vouchers. Those are a little higher. So 44% of those are leasing up in Benton County. We're trying to figure out the difference there. It might be the bedroom sizes they're looking for, but we are currently analyzing that because maybe there's something we can tap into to make more success for the other programs. Emergency housing vouchers, and I kept you guys on the same screen. Look at that. Okay. Emergency housing vouchers, and this is just new data that I brought this morning. Those are the vouchers that we work with Community Services Consortium on, which is just an amazing collaboration there. We have so much success. We are at about the third housing authority in the state with the highest rate of success with that program. And that's competing with Lane County and the Portland area. And that I attribute that to the relationship with CSC and other organizations and the outreach and the navigation part of that piece of that program. So that's successful in Benton County as well. And this will shock you. It's 60% lease up in Benton County, 40% Lynn County for the emergency housing vouchers. I think it's the navigation that we have a navigator working with those, and we have the funds for that, only those for a navigator. We are looking deeply into finding resources to keep a navigator going after this program is fully leased. We anticipate, we look at all of these programs, if we mesh them all together, the difference in Benton County and Lynn County is more like 42-58. If we mesh the success of the smaller programs with the big program. So we're growing in success rate in Benton County. And that's something that, like I said, we'll really focus on. Some of the different things that happen in those programs that add some variation is vouchers are portable in all of the United States. If I had a family issued a voucher in Corvallis, Oregon, they live in Corvallis, Oregon, and they need to move to Arizona or Hawaii or Alaska or New York, they certainly can do that. And people use that tool to help them go where they need to go for various reasons in their life. Yeah, so that's kind of my update on data. And I wondered if there are any questions.
Got a ton of questions.
Oh, boy. Okay. I love them.
When do the emergency voucher lapse? And so at what point would you lose that navigation capacity?
So once we get them fully leased up, we were given a chunk of money in different increments. And we recently received the last chunk when that money runs out, and we are fully using it. We use it for deposits. So in that program, we can use those funds for things we could never use any of our regular funds for. So that those funds will lapse when that money is gone, and that will be this year. We are finding within our Section 8 program that we're going to keep that staff person, but the duties that expand, we're not sure that we can afford to continue to expand, but we're researching that. The families stay in the caseloads of our case managers as, typical families, and they sometimes have higher needs because their life skills aren't as in place as other families who've been living in rentals for years. So once those families go off the program, HUD says we'll lose those vouchers, but I anticipate they'll just roll them over into, I've seen this happen before, into regular vouchers, and we're all keeping our fingers crossed that that's what happens.
So have you been talking to the governor's office about an investment in navigators, for instance, to complement HUD vouchers? It seems like it would be a
Yes, we
no-brainer.
recently had a meeting with Tina Kotek and some representatives from the governor's office, and it was Lynn County, Benton County, and Yamhill. And that was an extended part of that discussion later. We've had, some ideas thrown at us that we're certainly pursuing. Absolutely. That's a hope.
I have another question about, I know that Representative Rayfield, before he became speaker, dedicated some of his pot of our state ARPA dollars to Lynn Benton Housing Authority to invest here in housing in Benton County. What's the status of that?
Yes, we do have that targeted for a couple different ideas of projects here in Benton County, and kind of just waiting for those to come alive and decide where that money goes. One of them is the, I'm drawing a blank, the hotel.
The turnkey 2.0.
Turnkey. That's the main one we're focusing on. We're hoping that we can put that $750,000 into that and add to the success of that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll hear good
Yes.
news about that at some point.
Yeah, I did. I was hoping I didn't miss an email somewhere that I'm just
Not yet.
anxious to see it move.
And I'll ask one more question and then pass it on to my colleagues, because I'm sure they have questions too. You mentioned the ownership of a couple of projects and the partnership and development. And I know that some of the partnerships were with Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services, which no longer exists in that form, is now Dev Northwest. I was wondering whether or not how that partnership is going, and whether you're still working actively with
Dev Northwest, because they've been pretty quiet in our area lately.
Yes, I was gonna say they're pretty quiet with us. There's not a lot of activity. A lot of the folks that worked in that group, we had very tight, close relationships are no longer there. It's not as, I guess there's not as much communication as we have had in the past and that we wish for. The collaboration is still there. It existed. There's a partnership on paper for Camas Commons, for example, and the Julian just has always been a peaceful project, and it just happens. The money comes, the money goes in. Once a year, we communicate and try to get them a rent increase. The Camas Commons is a little different because we actually, when there's cash flow at the end of the month, end of the year, some of that goes to Dev Northwest, and some of it's meant to provide resources for the families there. So we're trying to figure out what they're doing, if they can do anything, what they're doing with those resources to get families some services. We're doing the services ourselves because we're a property manager and we live on site and we take care of the grounds and we're dealing with the families constantly. We have a lot of vouchers in there. It's part of the responsibility falls on the housing authority as well. We need to reach out to those new people at Dev Northwest and get some more communication going and get to know them a little better. That was a great partnership. And I say was because, Jim Moorfield and Brigida and Jody and all those folks, that place exists because our two agencies came together and we took that property we had and we made something great for people to live in. And we overcome the challenges that came with it. So I'm hoping to continue in a more, I guess we have to be a little more aggressive about our communication with Dev Northwest.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A couple questions. And you touched on what opportunities do you see with the new governor and her emphasis on the housing issue?
Yep. I think the first thing I got excited about is a state of emergency for homelessness and affordable housing. That gives opportunity for more funding in the areas. I think Corvallis and Benton County shines, unfortunately, as a high need area for affordable housing and the homeless issues as well. And I think that we're going to move in a good direction. I think I anticipate because of the way this administration has worked in the past. And I've, as a housing authority, have worked with Tina Kotek in the past in her different capacities. So I'm familiar with Tina, and our housing authority executive director group in the state of Oregon works closely with the governor's office. And Dan Rayfield is part of our board, Lynn Benton Housing Authority board. So we have this close communication with Dan. And I strongly believe that everything about affordable housing and homelessness is on the forefront of that team. And we're all going to be in it together. Kind of get goosebumps when I think about it.
Okay. You touched on a little bit about staffing, and I'm curious, how many people does it take to run your program?
To run a housing authority? Well, considering that we run a property management department, which is a love-hate thing. It's a very, very tough thing. Anyone who does property management should receive a gold star all the time. It's challenging in so many ways. And we have the Section 8 voucher program and some of the other programs. Altogether, give or take the part-times, around 35 employees that we have at Lynn Benton Housing Authority. And those are reception, case managers, inspectors, the management team, property management, on-site managers, oversight managers of properties, maintenance staff, so on.
Okay, and earlier you mentioned I guess it's the HUD dollars going from 17 million to 24 million.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Is that keeping your organization even because of price increases, or is there some progress built into that increase?
Such a good question. Historically, HUD has funded housing authorities at a lesser rate than 100% of need.
Mhm.
So go back in the past, about 15 years ago, we received 69% of our admin dollars one year, laid off 3 employees and had to get through the year with 69% of what we needed. This year, last couple years, we're getting closer to 90%. You know, it's kind of that, we've been dealing with so much less that 90% we sing and dance about. Woohoo, we get 90% of what we need. We make it work. We believe that you get what you pay for in your staffing, and we do the best to retain. We have very long-term staffing. And to answer your question more thoroughly, the voucher program has had its level of cuts and shorts in the past as well, 80%, 85%. But then the last several years, we've had 99 and 100% funding last few years. And yes, it has made a significant difference. We've been able to, for example, raise our payment standards and pay more in the voucher program. We're using that money, and we've been able to, hire the staff and get some software changes and become a little more independent and productive, anticipating whatever may come in the future. It depends on administrations at the federal level. It depends on failure and its success rates that we share with our partners in the country. There's, when big dollars come down from the federal government, there's an assessment of all housing authorities across the nation and what we need, and they divvy the money out that way. Well, we don't have enough, or we have too much, which that hasn't happened yet, or just enough.
Thank you. I see Julia Arena here.
Yes.
Do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you. Yes, and Julie and I communicate quite a bit. Yes.
I have one last question. The portability of vouchers, do you see much leakage of our vouchers out of state, or is it pretty much counterbalanced by people coming into the state with vouchers?
It's counterbalanced, and we have a process that we absorb or bill, is what housing authorities across the nation do. So we either, when people come into our agency from another state or area, we have a decision to make, and a financial decision. Do we absorb them into our vouchers, take in one of our local vouchers, because that becomes a local family? Or do we bill that housing authority and keep billing them for what we're spending? Billing is a challenge. So the problem that most housing authorities are absorbing now. So if we ported a family down to Los Angeles, for example, their costs of their rentals are significantly higher than us. And then they would bill us for double, triple what that family we'd pay on that family here. It was eating up our HAP dollars. So we had an agreement across the nation that most cooperating housing authorities absorb. And then that became a necessity because we need our lease up rates to go up.
Yeah.
So everyone's absorbing vouchers, thank goodness, because that was really a tough one for a lot of smaller housing authorities, let alone ours, which is considered large.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions. Thank you.
I really appreciate getting some specifics on
You bet.
your organization, and I'm not that familiar with the goings on, but I know you're active on our community. Appreciate that, and it's great to appreciate having you come in person and catch us up.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do appreciate you working with us and our board members. 4 of our board members are Benton County and 4 Lynn County. And I do want to say that we have an outstanding Lynn Benton Housing Authority board, and they work well with our agency and our employees. And I thank you for the approvals and referrals that you do on that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love the fact that there's actually some optimism this time around.
Yes, well, people say I tend to do that, but I mean it. I've seen things change over the years, and you can let the moments get you down, or you can think, gosh, what can we get out of this? And how can we look forward and want it better and do something about it? So optimism tends to work for me.
Well, and I think there's more of a general recognition that there is a serious problem
Mhm.
and we can't.
You're absolutely right. I appreciate that it's a known fact now. I worked in a time when you had to convince people it was a problem.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it is, and it's known. So thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, a report from the Oregon Water Resources Department, Water District 22 Water Master Joel Plain. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. So, my name is Joel Plong, I'm the water master for District 22 with the State Water Resources Department. That district primarily covers Yamhill, Polk, and Benton County. And what I do is distribute water throughout the summer months amongst the water users. So in the state, just because you may have a stream going through or past your property doesn't automatically mean you have a right to take that water and use it. You have to have obtained a water right at some point or file to obtain a new water right. And then all those water rights, the regulations based off of a priority date. So when you file or establish that water right, you're given a date. And then in a time of shortage, you can make a call. So typically on a creek where a farmer's running out of water or not being able to pump, the creek may be going dry, or there's just not enough water for what they're allocated. They'll call me and inform me of what's going on. I'll go out, do a stream flow measurement to see, is there the water there for their right or not? And if there's not, then we'll start regulating the most junior users on that system in order to get that senior user that water right. That doesn't mean we just go shut off everybody on the system. We look and just regulate enough to make their right met. So along with farmers having rights, which is typically who will make the call for water, there's also water rights that maintain a certain amount of flow in a stream. So Mary's River, for example, has water rights, and we often call them in-stream water rights. They were established, the older ones were established in 1964, and they'll specify a point. So the common one that I'm looking at throughout the summer is June 22nd, 1964, Mary's River in-stream water right, which states there needs to be 10 CFS in-stream where the USGS gauge is. And so throughout the summer, we'll monitor that gauge to get a feel for what's going on, and we'll make corresponding measurements at that site. And again, we call them an in-stream, but it's a certificated water right, just like the farmer has. And if that wasn't there, so we go out and measure there's less than 10 CFS, then we'll look at who the most junior users are and start regulating those. Another stream that we spend a lot of time on is the Lucky Mute River, which for the most part is in Polk County. But it comes down into Hoskins, and there's junior users in Benton County on that stream system. So we spend a lot of time measuring the flows in that river and doing regulation on that stream. And then where we have in the past 5 years seen a consistent call for water is Muddy Creek, closer up by kind of Alpine. And so we spent a lot of time kind of measuring, trying to see, is the water there, is it not? And that stream system's been challenging because you only have about 3 cubic feet per second
Mhm.
flowing through there. And you have, 50 plus users. They're not always all using. So you're trying to see, well, who is using and how much and kind of distribute it among that. Just to give you some numbers, Benton County, for example, if you look at all the irrigation water rights that we've had issued in the county, you're looking at over 80,000 acres of irrigation. In my district alone, I'm dealing with a little over 6,700 water rights. And then those water rights will specify where you're authorized to take water. So a point on a stream, a point from a well, and we're looking at over 9,000 points of diversion. To kind of focus it down a little more, if you just wanted to look at Mary's River, you're dealing with almost 600 water rights and a little over 770 points of diversion on that river. So a lot of my time is kind of spent in the field, seeing who's using, doing measurements, and trying to see what's about to happen. Several of these water rights, depending on the season, may not be being used. And so that plays a big role into regulation. Last year was, in the 7 or so years I've been doing this, last year was the best year ever. We had anywhere from double to 3 times the amount of water in August and September that I have in the prior years. It was just amazing. And big contribution was just all the rain we had in June. Leading, it's really hard to kind of predict what's going to happen for the upcoming year, because you never know what we're going to have, or if we'll hit and miss some rain showers throughout. It really makes a difference. And last year I was just surprised, like I'm close to the Benton Polk County border, so I'm always either driving to work or driving home, and I noticed the garlic farmer, I kept watching this field every time I drove by just to see if they'd put guns out or anything to irrigate. And it wasn't until the second week of July that I saw irrigation guns go out in the field. I was like, wow, this is a great year. They're kind of just fighting. They want it to dry up a bit. So we'll be hopeful for another one like that, but we'll just have to wait and see what we get.
We'll see if we can pass a resolution.
Yeah.
Have another meeting.
John? Yeah, thank you. And one of the questions that we had is that we know that Oregon Water Resources Department got some additional funding. And so you've been able to staff up more. How is that going?
So we've had, I can't speak to all the staffing, but specifically
For you,
for me,
22, that's what I care about right now.
the big help has been, we've gotten a lot more staff to deal with cannabis related grow sites. And that was taking a significant amount of time to kind of investigate and deal with. And so as a region, so Lane County, all the way north, Clackamas, we have 5 new cannabis positions, and that's what they focus on. And so that's been a huge help. I asked them in Benton, just Benton County, over the last year, they researched 22 OLCC sites, so marijuana grow sites, and 8 hemp, which is ran through Oregon Department of Agricultural sites. They did 8 site visits, found 3 sites in groundwater violations, meaning They were likely using the well on site for irrigation of the crop, but did not have a water right. They said in general, there's been a lot more grows in Marion and Clackamas County than Benton County. And I'd kind of agree with that. I feel like I get a lot more calls or see a lot more in other counties, so much more than I have in Benton. Prior to their staffing, I spent a lot of time just, trying to go to these sites and investigate. But oftentimes it's challenging because they're just small. If you drive by somebody who's irrigating 100 acres, it's real easy to see them irrigating 100 acres. These other sites are often really small, and it's just hard to be there at the right time to see, okay, what water is being used and where's it coming from. And then they would oftentimes say, well, we truck water in. It was really challenging to track that. We didn't have any way. In this last legislative session, they passed new laws to say, okay, if you're going to truck water in, you have to provide weekly receipts to the department and show us where's this water coming from. And there's been other things in that law that make it a lot easier to track and enforce off of.
I'm glad to hear that. We have been providing you with an additional 10,000 per biennium to help support the boots on the ground here in the district. Are you still going to need that moving forward?
I feel it'd be very beneficial.
Okay.
So I've been fortunate. Yamhill, Polk, and Benton have all been providing funding. And so what it allows me to do is we've been hiring a temporary that typically goes for 3 or 4 months. Historically, it's been, I think, for 4 years in a row as OSU students or recent grads, and this last year, Western Oregon. That's really beneficial because then I have somebody to go out and measure these streams right when we get the call. When a farmer calls and says, I'm out of water, and we need to go out and make that stream flow, we need to go right then. And so the benefit has been just sending them out immediately to respond to those issues. So I will be requesting that again, and thank you. It has been very helpful.
Thank you. It's good to know how it's being used.
And do you anticipate Polk and Yamhill counties also continuing?
Yeah.
Financially.
Yamhill built it in to their reoccurring budget. So they just send it's 5,000 every year. And then Polk, I requested every year. And all the counties have been doing this now for, I can't tell you exactly, several years.
Okay, well, from your territory, and I live in Lucky Butte drainage area, and I think it's accurate. Snowpack doesn't really affect our system. So, like you were talking about last year, good spring rains really made a wonderful year for having a decent amount of water in the summer. So I hope we could do that more frequently, because that really helps the whole system.
Yeah, on the Lucky Mute and the Yamhill system in particular, just an occasional rain throughout the summer makes a huge difference. I mean, you can watch the Lucky Mute has a USGS station at Sarah Helmick Park. And so oftentimes I'll watch that. And if we just get a shower here, it'll kick it up and it'll hold you out for a week or two. And so in past years, we have shut the whole basin because Lucky Mute has a June 22nd, 1964 in-stream water right. And there have been years where we regulated everyone who was junior to that. So hundreds of people have received shut-off notices. And then I think it was 2017, we had rain in mid-September. And you watched it kick back up and we started measuring. And so we were able to tell farmers, hey, turn on for the next week and then shut off and let's see where we're at. Because now we have enough water. So it's been challenging to,
Mhm.
kind of predict what's going to happen. But when they get those shut off notices, if we do get a rain shower, I mean, we are monitoring that and the assistants out there measuring, multiple times a week in some instances. And we're able to turn people back on for a while and let them start watering again.
How about the end of the irrigation season? I know that there's a hard stop, but of course, climate change doesn't respect those rules.
Yeah.
Are you seeing more violations of end of season because of the fact that we can have these long, very dry falls?
I'm seeing a lot more people wanting to irrigate, and seeing so I'll go a grass field, a fescue field is a great example. You drive by it all season, they don't ever irrigate.
Yeah.
You get a dry September, they got big guns going out there. And then I have had some people going into August, and the Marys River decree established the irrigation season. And so that season is April 1 through the end of September. It doesn't allow any time outside of that. Part of it is just educating people and letting them know.
Mhm.
I feel a lot of people just didn't know and have come into compliance once we tell them. There have been some instances where we've had to shut off the water and go more of an enforcement route. So for the most part, we've had compliance. There have been a few instances where we haven't, and we've taken the enforcement steps. So, and climate change is impacting it significantly because a lot of people are wanting that October.
Mhm. So is that particular end of irrigation season restriction is specific to that 1964 water right in the Marys?
It's specific to any irrigation right on the Marys River
Okay.
that is coming from the Marys. And a lot of these old rights don't list an irrigation season on them, which I believe is part of the confusion. The court decree established the irrigation season, and then we issued all these water rights through 60s, 70s, and 50s for the Marys River, but it doesn't list a season on there. It just says Marys River. And so I have ran into the case where people say, well, what are you talking about? Here's my water right. It just says, and so I can understand why they would think that. And then we go on. And so we have looked at alternatives with some landowners. So storage is another option, obtaining permits to build a reservoir and store winter water and then use that for the season. Some cases, groundwater, a little tougher out here. There's just, you don't see the irrigation wells unless you get closer to the Willamette. So, and this past season, we sent out a lot of letters to users on Marys River who we know irrigate, just reminding them of what the season was, giving them information about the decree.
Have you worked with the Watershed Council on that?
No.
Yeah, they, given all the work that they do directly with landowners along the Marys, Muddy, it might be helpful just to explain that court decree to them, and they can help maybe get the word out.
Yeah.
Soil and Water Conservation District likewise.
Okay.
Joel, you mentioned, I think it was the USGS monitoring site on the Lucky Butte. What's a good website for monitoring stream flows in our area?
So the other USGS on the Marys, they're all just ran through the USGS. So oftentimes if you just Google Marys River USGS, it'll come up. Other than the USGS ran sites, I'm not really aware of any other ran sites. We call them miscellaneous measurements that the state does. So Greasy Creek, Marys River, which are being measured by department staff. Those are all uploaded onto water resources site. So you're able to search, Mary's River and see every measurement that we have ever had record of. And so oftentimes if people kind of are wondering about regulation, when we get into July, I'll go back and look at prior measurements to give them an idea of, well, okay, here's a year we regulated and here's the time. How does that flow compare to what we're seeing today? And then just try to get that information. So we've also tried to measure on the same dates or right next to the same date every year, for the past 5 now. So I'm hoping as we continue to do that, we can give people a better idea of, will there be regulation? Will there not be regulation in the future?
You have no modeling. It's all just your expert judgment at this point.
What's that?
No modeling, just your expert judgment.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea, though. And is there an in-stream water right on the Greasy also?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's we measure right at the
Confluence.
yeah, well, we're measuring it right under the bridge.
Okay.
I can't think of what that. Yeah. So I think it's a 5 CFS, right, during the summer. And then I was just looking at data in October. We went out and measured because I was just curious of what it was this last October, and I think it was 6.4. So that was being met, and that's a 1980 somewhere priority date. So most of the in streams are either going to be a 1964 or a 1980s priority date. It kind of seems like that's when those were applied for.
Yeah, I know there was a bunch of fish habitat study out there at the time to see if we could have coho hatcheries in the watershed. So probably dates to around then.
Joel, I appreciate your report. I know I had thought how the cannabis and hemp grows would affect your job, but that's why it's nice to have at least annual reports on what things look like from your point of view. So appreciate you coming in person. Keep up the good work.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And you've been in touch with Rick Krager, right, in our finance department about the contribution? Yep. Good.
All right, if we're all right to roll into new business, adoption resolution 2023-001 requesting governor to add Benton County, the list of counties considered for inclusion in executive order 23-02. And that's Commissioner Ogerow.
Thank you. First, a little bit of context. Many of us that have been focused on housing issues were very excited. We knew that the Governor Kotek was going to announce a suite of housing and programs for homelessness when she took office, and she did indeed put forth an emergency regulation with respect to housing declaration, I should say, not regulation. Unfortunately, to our chagrin, it didn't include Benton County. And in fact, what we learned after investigating was that the data that was used was based on point-in-time counts that are done under the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department's mandate. And they are based on a geographic region called a continuum of care. And I know that you all are familiar with that at this point, and the fact that Benton County, as well as Lynn and Lincoln, are part of what the rural Oregon continuum of care, and therefore we're lumped with 26 other counties. And we don't really have control over the best practices for our own data collection. It makes it very challenging to, because those data get lumped with the rest of the state, to see our own trends. We can display them individually, But even some of the dynamics for how those measurements are made and the timing of them can dilute our numbers and make it look like we don't have as much homelessness as we have. So we didn't meet the governor's threshold of for increase over a 5-year period. I think it was more than 50% increase over that period of time because of our inclusion in that remainder of Oregon or rural Oregon continuum of care. So what I've put forth here, working with staff, particularly Julia Arena and Rebecca, it is both a letter and a resolution. And we started out with a focus on a letter because we had been talking with our colleagues over in Lincoln County, and we knew that that's what they were doing. And so that you'll see that as item 4.2. And then the resolution idea came forward because Peggy and Dina over at the Community Services Consortium were working on resolutions for the Benton County Board of Commission, the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners and the Lynn County Board of Commissioners. And Lynn is considering theirs this morning also, because that's where Peggy is. That's because they are also petitioning to be covered under the emergency declaration. You'll note that our emergency declaration, while it puts forth the broad argument that we're making, what we're asking is that we have the opportunity to be covered by Executive Order 23.02 and not just asking to be included in the emergency order. And the letter likewise walks that line of asking for the opportunity to be covered based on our data for the geographic boundary of Benton County. And the reason for that is that we are not completely sure what the emergency order will require in terms of approach to addressing homelessness. It may indeed provide more funds, but it also may mean that we end up with an EOC activation. And if we have the Emergency Operations Center activation, that just adds in a whole nother layer of staffing requirement and slows down decision-making in this case, given that we have the regional pilot program, the regional office just emerging as the strong leader in this area. So we don't want to run counter to our own productive work that's already in process. It may well be that Lynn County, for instance, given that they're not part of the pilot program, needs this extra capacity and needs that oomph. So we want to be able to join in the program, but not necessarily have to stand up an EOC. We also don't know what kind of emergency land use regulations come along with it. And we are sensitive to the fact that our cities would be the ones that would deal with those emergency land use regulations. And we want to have at least the opportunity to consult with our cities before just opting in. So with that, I would recommend that we approve both the resolution regarding Benton County inclusion in the governor's emergency order opportunity to be included, and the letter. The letter is designed as a cover letter to go along with the resolution. You'll note that the letter have a CC to the State Director of Emergency Management Department, Andrew Phelps. I would like to also add as carbon copies Senator Gelsler Bluen, Speaker Rayfield, and Representative Gomberg, because they're all quite aware of this issue. And I've been in consultation with each of them and had promised to keep them up to date about any kind of letter that we directed to the governor.
All right. Any questions or discussion?
Nope, just I support it. And I can make a motion unless Commissioner Odro would prefer to. I move to adopt resolution number R 2023-001.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Moving on to the letter. And do you need any more information about that?
Just a comment. I really appreciate Commissioner Odro taking the lead on this. I think it was just last week, I saw the wonderful map. And was appalled that it was so inaccurate and this is a difficult enough process to quantify the numbers, and we have different attempts at trying to quantify our situation, and to be lumped in with Harney County and Malheur County, wonderful counties, but I don't think we have the same population needs, climate, industry, however you want to say that. So anything we can do to be more accurate, I think, serve us all well. And so thank you for your speedy efforts here, getting this before us.
Well, thank you. And I just want to thank staff, both Rebecca, Julie, and then Peggy McGuire as well from CSC.
In less than a week.
Yeah. I would move approval of the letter to Governor Kotek requesting the opportunity to be included in her emergency order on housing and homelessness.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, Julie,
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Of course, anytime.
All right, next up on the agenda is information sharing between the three of us. Have any information to share?
I have a couple things.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to put it out there that the Local Officials Advisory Committee, which I chair, has some openings. And if there are any city councilors or commissioners in Oregon that are interested in serving on that committee, now is the time to apply. And people can reach out to me and I can steer them in the correct direction. Let's see, the Historic Courthouse Advisory Committee is still working. This last meeting, we all broke up into subcommittee assignments and really fleshed out what subcommittees there were going to be. And we got it narrowed down to 2 subcommittees. So that's where some of the heavy lift is going to be taking place. So I think that is a good direction, and stay tuned.
And what are the 2 subcommittees?
The 2 subcommittees are Culture and Arts, which everyone would like you to know does include culinary in that broader topic. That was a point of conversation, and Government Civic. So both of those actually are very big overarching categories. So
Government, what?
Civic.
Okay.
How much longer is that task force or subcommittee or enterprise going to go? Do you know?
So tentatively, things can change, but they're hoping to come to the board in the next couple months to give an update on just where they are in the process. And that will be before there is a formal draft. They're also planning to do public outreach and receiving public input, which will help guide and change the draft of that document.
Good.
So I think the target date, though, is the end of June for it to wrap up. But, I really appreciate Chris Westfall, who is the chair, and him specifically calling out that we want the public engagement to be robust and meaningful, and not just checking a box of, oh, we did it.
Great.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you 2 heard, but the Benton County Talks Trash meeting the Zoom meeting got hacked. And I was sitting in the audience, and all of a sudden we were like, what's going on? And so I just wanted to thank staff for their quick thinking and turning off and trying to figure out what the heck do we do, and getting IT involved, and everybody worked together to get the situation fixed and a new meeting back up, and participants were able to come back on virtually who were on virtual But it was definitely an interesting situation.
Sounds like it.
Yeah,
And that was, Zoom is the platform,
yes,
because I know last year they had significant problems and hadn't heard anything lately, so.
yeah. I had heard that at the beginning of the pandemic, that happening. So this is quite a surprise, and it started off with just somebody drawing on the screen and then showing videos and some inappropriate words and images, but yeah, staff did a great job to take care of it.
So I hadn't heard that, so thank you.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Well, I attended the Community Health Centers board meeting last night. They are they participated in a retreat, as you heard from Carla Jones, the health department, not health department, the Community Health Centers director a while back. Staff are working up that strategic plan, and it'll be back to the Community Health Centers board before it comes to us. But one of the main things to note about that board is that they are struggling. They need more directors on that board. And the mandate that they have at least 51% of their board members be clinic users makes it a little bit challenging. But if you are out talking to people in the community, please know that that is one of the boards that definitely needs additional capacity. If your colleagues and friends and neighbors are users of any of our community health centers. On the bright side, there are at least 2 members now that are from Lynn County, and that's fantastic, because for a long time we had no Lynn County representation despite the Sweet Home and Lebanon clinics. I spent quite a bit of my discretionary time this last week working on the housing letter and resolution, and then been continuing to work in the background on some of the justice system improvement program related stuff and making presentations. And I'll be doing a couple more of those today. One to Philomath Rotary, and then the second Joe with Joe. So Joe with Remote Joe.
And when is that?
That is at 2.
Yeah, 2 o'clock.
Thank you, John.
And it's some of it, is there in person too, or is it only
Yes.
Zoom? Okay. Well, got it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Corey.
And
I heard the voice from the back of the room.
that'll be in this room.
That will be in this room.
Okay.
Yes, we did. The first one was hybrid also.
Just Joe's going to be remote was the,
Joe is definitely.
got it.
remote.
Okay.
Okay. And that's it for me.
I guess my main comments will be about our increasingly robust legislative efforts. I think we got a chart over the weekend, laid out in a very nice form what our main efforts will be in the legislative arena, and really appreciate Rick Krieger's and staff's work on getting that together and impressive format, nice and clear, relatively short. And I'm just thrilled with our having a government relations firm on board. And I think maybe because it's a new year, but I'm quite hopeful that we will be successful in some of our requests for funding of important projects. And so looking forward to more information on that, and I think all of us should be willing to do what it takes to make the contacts or do what we can to advance some of these projects. And along those lines, our initial legislative breakfast is a week from Saturday. So the state legislative session has kind of started, not officially yet, but committee meetings. And so I'm really happy that we have somebody monitoring the legislature on a full-time basis. And I'm cautiously optimistic that that will serve us well. So I think that's what I had. So the only thing left on the agenda is other. Is there any other? If not, meeting adjourned.
Woohoo.
Thank you.
Thank you.